Welcome back to Against the Cage, your home for all things MMA, including fight recaps, previews, and, of course, exclusive interviews with all your favorite fighters. My name is Jake Aryeh. I'm joined here by my esteemed co-hosts, Scott Fontana and Erich Richter. And, guys, since the last time we spoke, well, technically since the last time you two spoke, because I was out last week, we'll go over some of that stuff there. But the last time we spoke, Conor Benn signed with Zuffa Boxing, reportedly for the sum of $15 million paid by Turki Al-Sheikh, which TKO execs confirmed which TKO execs would not confirm or deny that number, but they did clarify that it was paid for by Turki Al-Sheikh. He comes over from Matchroom Boxing. He will be on the co-main event of the Tyson Fury fight, which will be happening on Netflix. And obviously $15 million, reported sum, huge chunk of change, which most UFC fighters, if not any of them, are not seeing, right? So a lot of them have been a little bit concerned over this. They're a little bit miffed. So, guys, Scott, I'll throw this over to you. Let's talk about some of this outrage, right? Do you see this as a catalyst for change finally happening, these fighters finally speaking up and speaking out about fighter pay? What do you think, Scott?
Hell no. There is nothing going to change. This is just it's the latest in a series of movies that we have seen play out so many times. Fighters see some sort of financial injustice. Key fighter, usually it's somebody who's not fighting for the company anymore. Occasionally it's people who are still there. There will be legal battles that can play out occasionally, and sometimes there's some sort of managerial drama. But frankly speaking, nothing like that is even going to come close to happening here. You're going to have some people grumble loudly. Most people grumble quietly, and everyone going about their business the way they always do. It's just not there. There is no impetus on these fighters to collectively better their situation. So that what they're going to do is they're going to complain, they're going to whine, and then they'll move on. That's what's going to happen. There's nothing going to change.
I will say that is probably historic. Well, that is what has historically happened. Erich, what do you think?
So I see the point, obviously, and I'm not going to say, fully like fighters are going to unionize. And, I mean, Conor McGregor, that back in what was it, 2015, everyone's like, Conor McGregor is going to lead this unionization. It didn't happen, never was going to happen. I'm not saying that that's, actively coming anytime soon. Now, what I will say is this is a specifically bad look for TKO and UFC. It's specifically bad because the UFC previously has been like, yeah, we don't do that kind of stuff. We invest in the sport, stuff like that. That was always their argument for why they don't pay their fighters that much. Now it's impossible for them to say that they don't have the money because they got $7 billion from Paramount now per year. The money's there to invest in the sport and also give all of the fighters a 500% raise and still make a ton of money. So from that perspective, they're willing to give it out, and they're hiding behind Turki Al-Sheikh, which makes no sense. Turki is not giving away $15 million. The UFC, TKO is still providing value to him for that $15 million. So miss me with the Mark Shapiro hiding behind Turki Al-Sheikh saying that he's footing the bill. By the way, this is $15 million for one fight. And now he will go back to free agency where he could potentially make that or similar in the future, especially with a win. If he's able to build a fight, build a brand name, he's going to be able to command more money in the free agent market. There is a free agency in boxing. There is no free agency in the UFC. That's the difference.
For now.
Do you think that there's going to be a free agency in the UFC at some point?
No, what I'm saying is there is free agency in boxing for now.
Oh, I see.
That is what's for now.
I was with Erich. That's
one of them's going to
Well,
end, and it is not the box. It's not the MMA one. That's set. MMA is where they want boxing to be, and that's where I just look at the signs here, and if you want to see where Turki Al-Sheikh can get some value out of the investments in these type of things, it's shots across the bow from Dana and from Turki at other boxing entities. Like, hey, look, we don't need you. We could do things ourselves. And if the UFC and Dana White and TKO and all of these entities now, if they're able to get what they want out of the Muhammad Ali American Boxing Revival Act, which, by the way, is now out of committee with Congress, it's moving forward. If they get what they want out of it, then the UFC, or again, TKO, Turkey, they can make so many inroads in the United States in doing things the way they would like to. So it's a partnership. That's how I look at this from afar, and I see it, and I do see there being value in, again, Turkey Al-Sheikh potentially throwing a lot of money at this. Like, it's not that, like, it's a lot of money, right? For you and me, this is money that I'll never see. But they've thrown a lot of money at this. They certainly seem to have a lot of it, more to come. I just don't see why they wouldn't want to invest in that. And they're much more interested in boxing than they are in mixed martial arts over in Saudi.
Yeah, that was a question that I had off the top of my mind. Turkey footing the bill for, well, not, as you said, Eric, he's getting value out of it too. But paying the $15 million for a boxing fight for a boxer. I feel like the only time that this maybe could have happened, besides like for an entire event with like Sphere and perhaps some of the events that they had in Riyadh, was for that $30 million John Jones price tag. I don't see that happening for any other UFC fighter, and I guess the reason why is they don't have to, because they're not getting paid that much. That's not the market value at this point. What were you gonna say, Eric?
There's no need.
Well, the only thing about this, Scott, is you said that like the Saudis are way more interested in boxing than they are for MMA. I actually don't agree. I think that they're interested in combat equally. I just think that the UFC is willing and able. All the UFC is like, okay, you want to do it? Okay, give me an awesome site fee. Okay, cool. You give me like $10 million site fee. The fighters are all
they're
in the
not called
contract.
site fees anymore. They changed the nomenclature just this week. So yeah.
All right,
Shapiro said it on that call. Yeah, Shapiro. If they site fees is not a word they're using anymore. It's some, I forget the buzzword that they went with, but yeah, not site fees anymore, sir.
I'll throw it up.
Well, I'm throwing it. I'm going to keep using site fee for now on, because it's crazy that they just get paid. They get paid like the Saudi government PIF, the Public Investment Fund, is what Saudi Arabia uses to invest in sports. Really getting into the weeds there. But the PIF throwing out there that they can just pay a site fee to the UFC and be like, give us, we'll give you $10 million, and all you have to do is just do a show here. And the UFC's like, sure, I got paid 500 grand and to do one in West Virginia a few years ago. Of course, I'll take the 10 million to go to the Saudi Arabia. Or I know they're doing like the Abu Dhabi ones as well. They get paid an obscene amount to do this stuff, but like this is this is just a little bit cheaper way or a more expensive way, excuse me, for Saudi Arabia to get a bigger boxing event. That's it.
It seems to me that Turkey is distinctly more interested in boxing than he is in mixed martial arts or any other combat sport, like by a wide margin. And he is the one who's obviously making at least a public push. And I would think also probably, again, from afar, from reading about this kind of stuff, I'm not really in the boxing scene the same way I am into MMA. So I pick up a little bit less than I do in the MMA world, right? But it certainly seems like he's passionate about boxing and maybe interested in other combat sports. And there's a big difference, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, when you buying Ring magazine and, the ring belt and all that stuff, that I feel like that goes to show. And I'm very curious to see what happens I mean, we know what's going to happen with the Muhammad Ali Revival Act, but it is interesting to see just how much will change and if they will be able to, like you said, turn boxing into the UFC model.
Nothing is going to change. And honestly, this whole thing with Conor Benn, by the way, I love it when you were leading with this and setting it up. You're like, Conor Benn signed with Zuffa Boxing, as if like he's a person we usually talk about. We never talk about him. Yeah. And apparently in the boxing world, they don't really talk about him. He's not. I had heard of him. I actually had heard his name. I knew about how he had those 2 fights with Chris Eubank Jr. last year. I did know about that. I didn't follow them. I didn't know the result of them. I found out later that they've split them. For what it's worth, he's coming off the win. But at the end of the day, let's call this what it is. This is an extremely expensive troll job. They did this to piss off Eddie Hearn, to mess with Matchroom Boxing. The fight they put together, it's not like some sort of world-changing fight. My understanding is Roger Prograis, who his announced opponent, is not really a heralded guy, and not that Ben is either, but I think he's somewhere in like the top five-ish range at I think welterweight. Is he a welterweight? Um, yeah, exactly. No,
Shows you how
The
much
weight
we know.
class in boxing. I don't even get me started on the weight
I,
class in boxing.
I saw, well, welterweight's a welterweight division, right? At least that's one of those, like, not junior or light or senior or super or whatever's, right? But anyway, Dan Raphael, longtime boxing writer. I liked his tweet that he put out there. This helped give it a little context, I think. He referred to Ben as, quote, the highest paid undercard fighter in boxing history. He also gave props to Keith Connolly as the reigning and two-time manager of the year, for what it's worth. So it seems like there's a lot of props to be given for the situation that Ben has found himself in, to be very fortunate and lucrative, right? But at the same time, it's not because he's like some sort of difference making fighter, or even this is a difference making fight. They were able to kind of screw over Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Boxing. They did it, and it kind of worked. And look what we're doing. We're talking about it. So.
Well, I'll say this too, is that the MMA fighters, I think you had Sean Strickland come out against it, and you had Sean O'Malley come out against, how it was like, even Sean O'Malley was like, I have never heard of Conor Benn. I'm way more famous than him, and I've never gotten 15 million to fight. Like, and I was like,
But he also kind of
agree
accepted it. He basically just
Yeah.
accepted that
He is-
too. I
he
mean,
is-
like in the same conversation, he's just like, whatever, good for them, and that's
He
what
is
the UFC wants to
business
do,
savvy.
TKO wants to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's his own manager, right? Which I think we've been
Yeah,
saying.
Sean does a really good job with his business on the side, and he is right. Now, one point that I wanted to bring up, and I was alerted to this by, I believe it was Robert Joyner on X. Did anyone see the article that ESPN put out at 2 o'clock in the morning on Saturday about UFC fighter pay? Did anyone catch it?
I did not.
I certainly missed that. Yeah, no, I missed
Okay.
that in a busy weekend.
Listen to this. 2 o'clock in the morning, or Sunday morning, technically, on the East Coast, ESPN puts out an article about UFC fighter pay, quoting Sean Strickland, saying, UFC fighter pay calls it like a albatross, and I forget what the word is, but regardless, look it up online. ESPN puts out an article at 2 o'clock in the morning with no byline. It is just ESPN byline, which they never do for MMA. They do for some other stuff if it's like national news rewrite, stuff like that. I've never seen it for MMA ever. But ESPN puts out that article. I would love to know who wrote it behind the scenes. You could use your own judgment. Maybe you could find some writing patterns and maybe who wrote what. But ESPN had been silent about fighter pay for the last 7 years as their broadcast partner. And now, 2 o'clock in the morning, they throw out an article about fighter pay. I think it's interesting.
I mean, it's not surprising. I don't know what you're surprised about. They're not partners anymore, so they do what they want.
Yeah, but
what-
no byline. It never happened previously.
That part,
And now
sure,
that they lose the contract. They lose the contract, and then they talk. Now they're talking about it. I don't know how that isn't interesting.
No, it
I guess
Lots
it's
of-
just not surprising to me. Yeah.
Well, Eric, I do want to ask you one more question related to this, and maybe we'll dive into it a little bit deeper. I was out last week, obviously, while the Ronda Rousey Gina Carano fight got announced. Some stuff has happened since you two talked about that. Rousey revealed a little bit of some of the reasons why it didn't work out with the UFC, and one of the things that she noted was obviously they'd been doing pay-per-view, since she was an athlete there, and one of the reasons why it didn't work out with them is because she would not be getting a promised, pay-per-view percentage because they have a, deal with Paramount. There's no more pay-per-view anymore. Eric, I want to ask you, what do you think that will play into going forward for fighter pay now that there aren't pay-per-view points? There is no more pay-per-view.
This smells so bad. Like if all that is true, and the UFC will never confirm it. So as far as I know, it is true because at this rate, the way that the UFC is operating, if they're unwilling to and honestly, we'll see what kind of big fights come together now. And we had talked about this previously. Is if there's a pullout last second on a pay-per-view, will there still be the willingness to go the extra mile? And Conor McGregor pulls out, we get Alex Pereira in on 2 weeks notice. Will that happen again? We've talked about that. I think those are edge cases. I think the overall issue that we could see is that the UFC is not going to be willing to pony up money to make just really entertaining big fights with big names. Is Conor McGregor going to fight on the White House? He's said a million times that he's accepted opponents and they won't send a contract. What's his pay structure going to look like? If you look at his tweets, he deletes them so frequently, so you can't even really go back and look at them. But at one point, he tweeted, he's like, "I want to speak to Ali."
That's not
Dana
new.
White doesn't. It's so annoying. But he was like, "I want to speak to Ali, to Ari Emanuel. I don't want to talk to Dana White since he doesn't control anything anymore." And then he'll delete it, and then he'll like repost it, and he'll delete it again. I want to like, is there UFC going to have willingness to make big fights with big fighters? And if that's not the case, the UFC is going to lose a significant amount of public perception and just juice overall. Like, this is going to be, they'll probably will never be able to fight at the White House again. The Sphere might not happen ever again. Those like little one-off gimmicks to like get fans in the building, it's not going to, not a realistic way to build the sport. You need big fights and big fighters. They need to be able to have the flexibility to pay for that.
Yeah.
I think what the UFC is doing though is they're going big with their brand. They've never cared about making the fighters be the attraction. Dana White has been the attraction for the UFC for 20 years. He has. I mean, there have been big stars alongside it, but at the end of the day, Dana White is those three letters. That's what he is. And that's been a conscious choice. And he's still there. And that's what his value is, right? Especially. So they don't need him to put fights together. They don't need him to do all those things. They don't even need Ronda. She's a unique case, right? Let's take it back to Ronda. Her case is so unique because she hasn't fought in 9 years, right? So her contract was ancient, right? It's probably expired. I don't know the full details, but I'm going to assume it was probably expired, right? There have been a lot of lawsuits that have kind of worked their way through ever since then, too. So, and that's forced a lot of changes to the way their contracts are structured and all this kind of thing. I have to think that no one else on the UFC roster, this is going to be any sort of potential option for them to pass on and allow Ronda, in this case, to get the big fight that she wants somewhere else. No one else has that power. No one else has that ability, especially not the main names now, because that rotating database of names, it's gone so quickly. You're right about Conor, though. Like, what are we thinking Conor's actually going to get here? If they're not going to pony up for Ronda, probably Conor could get more, and justifiably so, but why would they need to do that? Because they can't rely on him long term. He's not a part of their big picture. He's 37 years old. He hasn't fought in, 5 years? He hasn't won in any combat sports fight in, I think, 6 years. He's got one win in the last 10 years. Like, he's not somebody they can count on. They don't need him, so they can just move on from it. They can do that with the fighters. And Ronda said it herself in this interview that, this whole thing came out of the interview that she had with Jim Rome. And she said it in the same interview, like, look, the UFC is trying to look to be cost effective here. They're trying to put on the best fights they can for the least amount of money. And it makes sense. And I think she admitted that. But obviously, yes, that does hurt the brand to some degree. I don't know that it's going to hurt it dramatically, because there's still going to be people who will come to the sport and not care, because there's going to be new fighters who come along. They'll make the money they're making. They'll probably be happy about it publicly. Maybe they'll grumble about it quietly, and eventually at the end they'll grumble about it more loudly, but that's at the end. That doesn't matter. They're still going to be just fine. I don't think the UFC brand's really going to be hurt in the long term, unfortunately, for the people who want the fights made.
It is interesting, something that you said earlier, Eric. It's like, you're wondering if they're going to still be able to pull in or put on that sort of like spectacle or fan interest and all that. Are fans going to still be interested? I feel like over the past year or two, like, there is a star problem, right? And it feels like the sport has lost a little bit of, I don't know, that je ne sais quoi, right? Like, that it had back in the day, say 2016, right? That was like when I feel like the sport was probably at its peak, right? But yet we still are moving more and more and more towards the UFC saying, we don't need that. We're the UFC. It's like you said, it's those three letters. No name can own this company. So I don't know. It is interesting, like, seeing that disparity. It feels like interest is like kind of plateauing or like going down from where it once was, but yet they're steering more into the aspect of not wanting or not needing any big names, right?
Sean Strickland, who says a lot of stupid stuff, was right on this one. is like basically no fight like fighters from the United States are just not really going to happen. I was like, then what happens to like the U.S. viewers? Like, don't you want U.S. stars? Like, once Sean O'Malley goes, who's gonna take his spot? Like, there's
Gable Steveson.
dude, no. After his last performance, dude, I don't know if you watched that
Yeah, I know.
fight.
He almost got knocked out.
He looked terrible.
I know. What idiot would rank him? That's ridiculous.
I don't know. Whoever that guy is should not have a podcast. That's for sure.
um, well, guys, if you're watching at home, let us know in the comments what you make of all this fighter pay. Do you think that the UFC is going to pay their fighters more? Can the fighters do anything about it? Are you a little bit more optimistic than Scott is? Let us know down below.
Can I just throw out there too before
Yeah.
we switch off of this topic? Look, you guys are talking about what happens when we lose like X fighter or these fighters or whatever. What happens to the UFC when Dana White is no longer involved for whatever reason that may be, whether it's he decides to move on, whether he is dearly departed at some point, or whether some other reason, right? If he's just not involved with the UFC, what is the UFC then? It doesn't matter about American stars. They still have Dana White, who again, that is the face of this company. He is the brand. If he's not there, that's what I start to wonder what the UFC is going to be if they don't have stars.
That's
And
an
I don't
interesting
think we're going to lose
conversation.
Dana White anytime soon.
Yeah.
I feel like this guy is in it for life. And he looks healthy enough. I don't wish ill upon his health, so there's that. He's going to be here. Let's get used to it. And until he's gone, this is all they need, and I think that's what they believe.
It seems like to me the UFC is trending towards a spot where every fighter on the card makes under 250 grand after bonuses. That's what it seems like.
We'll
I'm sure
see.
there will be money to be made for certain fight. I think it'll be more than that. I do, because I think they want to be able to say not through their teeth and lying. I think they want to be able to say we make millionaires still. They've said that before. It is technically true if you break it down in certain ways, right? I think they still want to be able to do that, but also, yeah, to your point. Yes, there's going to be a level of, hey, let's keep the prices and the percentages of the pie roughly around the same spots. I don't think they're interested in sharing more because why would it matter? They don't need to, so why would they financially?
I was looking at the fight card for this weekend, and I was like, I would love to see what the pay is on these guys for everyone besides Brandon Rain.
Only in California, right?
Yeah.
A few
All
places,
of
but
them.
California is one of the very few holdouts now. Yes.
Fair enough. Well, I think this has been a pretty interesting discussion. We'll see what happens in regard to that and the Ali Act and a whole lot of things to follow along with Zuffa Boxing and how it relates to UFC and all that. But speaking of UFC, guys, we just came off the heels of UFC Houston this past weekend. Sean Strickland stops Anthony Hernandez in round 3 via knockout. Eerily similar to Anthony Hernandez's last knockout loss. It's all started with a body shot to knee to the stomach. But let's start with Strickland in terms of going forward with this one. Really seems like the middleweight race kind of was secured by Nasruddin Imavov. However, with a win like that, Sean Strickland's obviously a big name. Scott, I'll throw this one over to you. Do you think that Strickland jumped over Imavov? Who should fight next for the middleweight title?
Yeah, I absolutely do, honestly, and it brings me no joy to say that. I'm not really the biggest
You're his biggest
appreciator of what Sean Strickland brings to the table, both in the cage and out of the cage. But I will say, look, give credit where it's due. He looked terrific in this fight. This was like a showcase, and we saw that killer instinct that I was talking about last week, right? Like we don't usually see it come through, but it does hurt you. He will come out with it, and he will go fast into it, and furious and violent, and he was absolutely finish-minded once the opportunity really did present himself. So you got to give him credit. He absolutely executed that to a T. This is probably his best win. Definitely his best win since Adesanya, but I think it's actually more impressive in a vacuum. Take out the caliber opponent, right? He just looked amazing in there, and he finished. He did what he needed to do. It was a better opponent than we saw Imavov defeat last year when he took that fight against Kyle Bahalio. There really just was not as much to gain from that fight. If anything, you'd have loved to see him get that title shot off of the win over Adesanya, but that didn't happen. Now that's starting to be a little more of a distant memory. I think this is a better win. And hey, if you want to go back, it's 3 years. It's 3 years, but he does have the head-to-head win over
Yes.
Imavov. So there's a little bit of bragging rights there. He's been at the top. He's reached a higher peak. He's a bigger name. He's more well known. You can put him against Chimaev and sell that fight a lot better. So yeah, I think he
Yes.
absolutely, totally leapt over Imavov. Sorry to say it, Imavov. You're gonna have to fight somebody else. I'll tell you what. I'll give you real quick because I don't want to give it to you, Eric. But I will say I think Imavov versus Dricus du Plessis, if they did that next, I think that's a win-win. I really like that fight.
Yeah, I have nothing to add. Honestly, you said it all, Scott. Eric, what about you?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add either. I think that you're totally dead on this. I think that Sean Strickland did a really good job to building up
Damn it,
a
Scott.
Hamzat Chimaev fight. I think that Sean Strickland and Hamzat's the fight to make. Imavov, yeah, he lost it. He lost to Strickland straight up. Strickland's a bigger star. Strickland's just generally more interesting. A lot of fight fans like him. I'm not the biggest fan. I've gotten into arguments about this. Some people really find a lot of motivation in some of the stuff that Sean Strickland dealt with in his life and has overcome. Again, U.S. stars. You need U.S. stars. So a lot of people really like Sean Strickland. So for better or worse, Sean Strickland's the guy. He's going to fight for the title, and
He's
more power
bringing
to him.
eyeballs. Yes, he's bringing in so many more eyeballs in this country than Imavov
Yes.
brings in globally, and that would be the only case you'd make is he a bigger global potential, eye grabber for them? And yes, in the French market, sure, but outside of that, I don't know that that's the case. I think Strickland is almost a no-brainer here, especially because
Yeah.
of how good he looked.
And
Yeah.
I just look at it like Sean Strickland's such a weird matchup for everybody. Anyone that fights him, it's a totally different matchup style than you're going to deal with. Like Hamza Chimaev's gonna be way different. Imavov, way different. Like Sean Strickland, he's going out there, he's coming forward, he's really good at boxing and kickboxing, and like
Jabs
he's
and
just got
teeps, you're gonna get a lot of them.
jabs, jabs, teeps, cardio, and trash talk. And honestly, it works.
I also feel like his grappling is something this guy spars so much. Like, that is all he
He
does.
looked humongous.
Yeah, and besides the Kamaru Usman fight back at welterweight, I'm pretty sure that was
a
one that
billion years ago.
that was a million years ago. I can't really think of any fights where Sean Strickland's just been like out wrestled and pinned to the ground. Obviously, Hamzat's a different animal, but I feel like Strickland's ground game is something that's underrated. He obviously stuffed a takedown from Fluffy here,
Yep.
and it's
He
also
got
just
taken
that-
down 6 times by Dricus du Plessis in their first matchup, but that was it.
fair enough.
And it was a split decision. It's not like Dricus was mauling him.
Yeah, but I feel like just that matchup on the microphone and online or whatever, there's a lot more
Worth it.
juice to it there with Strickland
100%.
and Hamzat. I feel like Hamzat's more excited to fight Strickland than he is to fight Nasruddin Imavov. I think that's fair
It
to
checks
say.
every box. When you're comparing the two, it checks every box. There's almost nothing you can give to Imavov other than the fact that he's on a better streak.
Yeah.
That's really it. It's
No
and
one's
and,
there.
and look, I'm less box office than Eric. I'm more like that sports, that meritocracy kind of thing.
Yeah.
And look, there is certainly merit for Imavov, but I can also give you merit for Sean Strickland over Imavov. So I can't really fight it. This is what it's supposed to be. Now, I think the real question is Hamza Chimaev even going to stick around to defend that title? He keeps being
Yeah,
more
that's
focused on
what I
205
would
anyway.
think.
So that's a whole nother can of worms,
He
right?
looks
But
big.
Yeah.
yeah,
He looks
he
big right
does.
now.
But he does. And does he want to get that weight? I don't know. I mean, I have no idea. But hey, who knows?
Right.
We might be talking about which of these guys deserves it more, and it might just end up being Imavov versus Strickland for a vacant belt. Who knows?
That
Or
is-
an interim belt or something.
That is very true. Well, Eric, I want to throw it over to you because once again, you are box office, and Mr. Strickland has been known for his mic work, for better or for worse.
That's a way to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the post-fight presser, I want to briefly talk about this one. His mic cuts out at the end of the press conference, right? They close it out after that. What's your take on that?
Well, he says a lot of stuff, right? And I believe he started getting into some sort of Aspen lad, some sort of disagreement that she made, or something that might have happened with the coach. I don't know the story. from my perspective, I was like, it felt like for WWE fans, it felt like a little bit like a CM Punk with a pipe bomb. Anybody that watches WWE, I think it's, I don't think it's bad for anybody. I think it's, arguably good for Sean Strickland, who was like, you know what, I'm not cutting the mic. And then the Schmo was asking him a question about Hamzat. He was like, no, I'm not done. Schmo asked me the question. It's pretty funny the way that he handles that. But the UFC's like, no, press conference is over. Press conference is over. It looked a little strange, to be honest. I think the broader question that, I mean, if you really want to derive implications from this is, what is the UFC going to be like on Paramount Plus when, fighters are saying things that aren't politically correct? The UFC has always been, we're free speech. We're free speech. You could say whatever you want. And I don't know if that's going to fly at Paramount. I
Well,
don't know.
it's interesting
I,
you
I,
say that because ESPN's owned by Disney, right? And
yes.
He
obviously,
was literally partnered with Mickey Mouse for the last 7
yeah,
years. I just don't see it being a problem. Like, I don't
and
think that the Paramount Plus era is what has to do with it. I could be
CBS, yeah,
wrong, but when you look at it on the surface, like, why is CBS and Paramount and their, especially their newer way of doing things, they were sold very publicly in the last couple of years. So
Yes.
I don't see why we're going to see them being more buttoned up, more, prone to what you may or may not want to call censorship or something like that. But, brand protection, what have you. I don't see how the Mouse House is going to be the one that's more lax than Paramount.
No, I agree. I'm not saying that it's definitely going to happen. I just think that we never saw it in the on the ESPN era, so I just don't know why we're seeing it now.
we don't know the
And this could just be a
specifics.
unique case. We don't know exactly. Sorry, I
Yeah.
don't want to cut off
Yeah.
there, Jake. You continue.
No, you said it as well. We don't know the specifics if they were the ones that cut the mic off. I mean, it is a little bit of a coincidence that it was during a Sean Strickland press
Yeah,
conference, but
it
continue.
It's
happened during
certainly a
Sean
look.
Strickland
Like, you can
Yeah.
program.
you can say that.
Hmm.
I don't call this censorship, but if anything, if UFC, TKO, whoever's PR, whoever it was, if they did indeed cut it off because there were concerns about some of those inflammatory things that Sean was saying, whether it was about Hamzat and some of those off-color things, or whether it was like you said about Aspen Ladd and all of that, and these salacious accusations, which we'll just not get into right now. I don't know what it was, but frankly, if it had anything to do with it, and they don't want to have him platformed that way, that's their choice. And I'm pretty okay not platforming him saying all the crazy stuff he does.
Yeah.
He, it's just I'm okay with it.
Yeah, he
No, I
also
have no
does have
beef with
a
it.
yeah, he also does have a big enough like social media following to where like
Do whatever he
he's
wants
gonna
there.
say those things anyways. It's yeah.
Right.
Probably more people will see it if he says it in a tweet on Tuesday than if he says it at the post-fight presser at midnight on a Saturday.
It's true. They
I mean,
actually yeah.
we saw on the UFC behind the scenes show, the UFC PR team, Lene Breckenridge, who we all know, was on a show talking about Sean Strickland giving them, they had meetings about things that Sean Strickland was
Oh
saying.
right,
Wouldn't
yeah.
surprise, if you guys remember watching that show. So
Yeah.
I don't know. He's definitely caused issues in the past. So I don't know. Maybe it isn't CBS. Maybe they're just tired of it. Who knows?
We don't know the billion meetings that they have. That's just one example. They probably have a billion meetings about all the stupid things they say, like, hey, we had one of our guys talk about how much he wants to go fishing with Hitler the other day. They have these meetings all the time about the stupid things that the fighters say, and they just have to deal with it and come up with a strategy. I don't think there's nothing weird about that. That's the business they're in. It's the fight
Yeah,
game.
cutting off the mic is definitely a strategy.
Yeah. Anyways, let's get to Mr. Fluffy Hernandez, who was at the other side of the octagon. Unfortunately, his win streak has been snapped. And Scott, I want to ask you, because obviously this is, I believe, his second loss in the UFC, or at least,
Third. He
Third
was 1 and
loss. Okay.
2, and then he went on his streak. Yeah.
There we go. All right, so he was on a pretty decent streak. Scott, I got to ask you, is this his ceiling for a fighter like Fluffy Hernandez? Do you think that he's ever going to be able to get back to title contention, or is he always just going to stay just below that level? What do you think?
I think, look, can he remain in the title picture? I think he actually can, but that may be what his ceiling is. I think this may actually be what his ceiling is. I don't know if he's going to break through. He could even get an odd title shot. I wouldn't even rule that out. But frankly, I just don't see him being any more impactful on the division scale than maybe that. Like he's got a bunch of tools in his belt, but none of them are really elite except for like his motor, for example, I mean, that's great, but like you're still trying to win a fight. And if other guys who are above you are pretty solid everywhere, but also they have like a trump card, some sort of wrestling or striking, something that they are absolutely clearly better than you then, and they can keep up with your pace or run a pace or prevent you from doing what you're trying to do. And I think a lot of those guys can. He's just gonna have a hard time breaking through. So yeah, like maybe he wins the right fight. I think he could beat anybody on any given day, including the champion. But I think more often than not, he loses most of those fights. So yeah, I think we're kind of looking at somebody who's probably roughly in his ceiling. I don't want to go to those, those gatekeeper, epithets and anything like that. I just don't think that's fair. He's still very
Wash,
much
fraud
in the
check.
picture. Yeah, a wash is stupid. Like, don't even ever try that with this guy, right? That's not fair. But yeah,
Yep.
I don't know. I don't see him being a champion. I just don't. And that's unfortunate because I think he's a hardworking dude and he cares, but I think he might not be quite at that level.
Yeah, he's what 31, 32 years of age. S
32.
Yeah, so he does have some time left. 3, 4 years, and still before that wall, so to speak, in age. But Eric, I got to get your thoughts. What do you think about Fluffy?
Yeah, I mean his best skill is cardio. So, when you have that as your best skill, you need to supplement it with something that makes sense. And like this was my issue. This is why I didn't like the fight billing when I talked about it on past podcasts. I didn't like this fight for him because his best skill is neutralized because Sean Strickland also has really good weaponized cardio, but not just that, he's a better striker. So the only path to victory was by takedown, and he did not look like he was capable of getting takedowns against Sean Strickland. When
He
you look
wasn't
at
even
the
very interested in it for a while either.
yeah. No, he wasn't. It looked like he wasn't even able to set it up properly. I was confused by why there wasn't a whole lot there. Jake, did you have a thought on that?
I feel like it's Strickland's jabs and teeps, man, keeping you
They're
at
just too
bay.
difficult to deal
It's
with.
it's hard to get close. I can't let you get
Yep.
close. It's hard to get in there when you're getting kicked in the solar plexus or in the
Yep.
in the diaphragm all the time.
Yep. Yep. 100%. And then like when you look at the problem is for Fluffy, it's not even skill related. Well, I mean, I guess it is in face value skill related, but like 185 is loaded right now. So like you look at the rest of it, and it's like it's loaded. He's coming off of a loss, and he's a little bit undersized. Like he's 6 feet. He weighs for 185. Like I don't know if he could ever make 170. I wish it was like 175, 185. Like we talked about this a million times. 165, 175, 185. He'd be a perfect candidate for 175.
If
But
if he could get
unfortunately,
to 70, I think I'd be interested in him there. But yeah,
100%. I highly doubt that that's possible. But it's one of those things where I don't see him getting there because of the weight division. Like he is going to be way undersized against Imavov. Hamzat is 1,000 times bigger than him. Like he is so big, Hamzat Chimaev as the champion at 185, and obviously Strickland looked way bigger than him too. Like Strickland was hanging over him against the cage. Like Strickland was bullying him against the cage when you against the cage. Strickland was bullying him against the cage.
huh.
But in a spot where you would expect Hernandez to have an edge, he didn't because he's so much smaller. Like Reiner de Ritter's gonna be bigger than him. Borjalo's gonna be bigger than him. Like it's just a I don't
I
look.
mean, he beat Reiner de Ritter pretty clearly, so there's that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm just saying, like
Or
looking
no,
at
he
like the
didn't.
rest.
Excuse me. But he would. I think. I really do think he would because of his motor.
Yeah,
That's what I'm
I
saying.
mean that fight didn't end up happening, but like I believe he was favored in it.
Yeah,
But like that fight, it didn't end up happening. But
he was
I
favored
guess my
against
point,
Strickland.
big favorite, like a really big
Yeah,
favorite. So I'm
yeah.
looking at it
I
from yeah, good.
I was gonna say I look at like our top 10, right? Like at the middleweight division, and I do look at the guys behind him, and I do still feel confident that he beats most of those guys behind him. Like you said, RDR. I think if they do decide they can make that matchup at some point, I think
They
he's
should.
not going to have distinct issues with him. I wonder if someone like an Israel Adesanya, how that fight might go, if he's able to get a win at against Joe Pyfer here. Maybe that's a potential matchup down the road. Probably not even the next one for him. But yeah, I look at the guys behind him. I think he could beat a lot of them. And I look at the guys ahead of them, and I say maybe Mavov, but others guys, I just I don't know if I feel reliably that he gets higher. So that's why I'm like ceiling maybe, you know.
Right.
Yep, hard to disagree. And to your point, Scott, earlier, he did beat the guy that beat Reiner de Ritter pretty convincingly. So
Beat the guy who beat the guy. It's not
yeah,
the same, but
MMA math is imperfect. But
Nice.
guys, let us
very
know.
imperfect. Yeah.
Let us know who you think should fight for the middleweight title next. Do you still need more convincing on whether or not it's the right call, at least for the UFC, to make this Strickland matchup? Or if you're still more interested in Nasruddin Imavov getting that shot, let us know down below. But guys, let's look ahead to UFC Mexico City this weekend, and obviously there's a big elephant in the room. There's a lot of events going on in Mexico, violence caused by
Cartel-related violence.
Cartel-related violence that going on in Jalisco. Very unfortunate. As far as we know, everything is going on ahead. Either this event is going to happen in Mexico City or it's going to get canceled. It seems like things are moving forward as they should. So we are going to treat it that way. Haven't heard anything different. So Brandon Moreno, obviously Mexico native, going to be taking on Loner Kavanaugh, who is a not late replacement, but he's a replacement for Asu Almabayev, who had to
He's a fill-in fighter, yeah.
Fill-in fighter. That's going to be starting. The main card will be at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. For the prelims, of course, all on Paramount Plus. And let's talk about Brandon Moreno here. Obviously, former champion. Little bit of a skid since that great set of fights with him and Davison Figueiredo. Eric, I'm going to throw this one over to you. What do you think he stands to gain now that it seems like the title picture's kind of far away from him right now?
Well, I could just say that the last time that I interviewed him, he expressed his regret of not fighting at the for Mexican Independence Day at the Sphere, and I think that he takes Mexican fight cards. I think he takes them really seriously. I think for him to gain, I think it's just another opportunity to fight in front of his home fans. It's an opportunity to get a paycheck. It's an opportunity to be the favorite in a fight that in theory you should win. I believe he was favored against Almabayev as well. And I think it's just an opportunity to put on a show in front of his friends and in front of his family in Mexico. In terms of, title aspirations, you're a ways away. And, he has the win over Amir Albazi, which is solid. But, I think that best case scenario, Brandon Moreno would maybe get a title shot on a fill-in spot, but that's about it, at least for now. In terms of what to gain, it's very simple. He's going to make money, and he's going to, fight in front of his hometown people. That's it. Something to note: 7,000 feet above sea level at Mexico City. Prepare for some tired gas tanks over in Mexico City. I'm sure that Brandon Moreno is ready for it.
I don't know. Most of these fighters are 155 and below, and really more like 135 and below. These are the guys who are known for the gas tanks a little more. So at least there's that, right? We don't have we have to worry about sea level cane being lost in this one, right? But yeah, as far as the question, right? What does Brandon Moreno stand to gain here? Is the answer nothing? It kind of almost is. Like, yes, it's the national pride. He gets to have that if he, by fighting in front of his countrymen. He gets a paycheck. He gets those things, right? He gets to be active. I think he does want to be active, right? But also the stakes are high in the other direction. If he loses, that's kind of the end of Brandon Moreno as any sort of championship level fighter, and possibly even as a headliner kind of thing. The next time he fights in Mexico, he might not be in the main event as much as people like him. So
exactly.
He's gonna have to win this just to kind of not just keep his spot, but like fend off the inevitable of aging and the washed word, right? That word that people like to throw out there. It would be a bad look if he lost to a guy who is coming off of a loss to, no disrespect to Energy Charles Johnson. It's just he is not a man of high status at the flyweight men's division right now, and it would set him back so much. That's the end of him as a championship fighter.
You want to hear something, Scott? It's not one of my three bets in 3 minutes. It's not my best bet, but I am picking Loner Kavanaugh.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will see. We will see.
I rewatched that Charles Johnson fight. Loner Kavanaugh was winning that fight. Obviously, he made a mistake and he got clipped. Um, I think that Loner Kavanaugh is going to win. I think that if he didn't, I mean, if he doesn't,
He's a young guy. He's interesting, right? He's only 26, I think. There's a future for him. Like what he is now is not necessarily what he's going to be, and maybe this is his launching point. But also, it just doesn't look like he should lose, or excuse me, Brandon Moreno
no,
should lose
good,
to this guy in this spot at this time.
It's interesting. We
100%.
we are coming off of a y'all must have forgot, sort of moment this past weekend with
Yep,
Sean
with
Strickland.
Strickland.
Saw one last
Yep.
year with Kamaru.
I had Strickland, thankfully.
Everyone was saying that Kamaru was washed. So
I did not have Kamaru.
yeah. So we'll see. We'll see. But guys, let's talk about some of the other fights on this card. Scott, what is your fight to watch outside of the main event?
I have to highlight Regina Tarin or Regina Tarin. I believe is how you say it. I'm trying to get
she
get
Latin
the
American?
pronunciations.
She's not.
She is, I believe,
Okay.
fighting in native in Mexico. I believe so.
Okay.
Against she's a late replacement here. This fight's at 130 pounds. It's a catch weight. She's fighting against Ernesta Caracate, I believe is how you say it, or Caracate, I think. But anyway, I have to highlight this because Tarin was one of my prospect picks last fall. She is now fighting in her UFC debut. I gotta at least say, okay, let's see how she does now that she's got here, right? And in between, by the way, it almost looked like she might have been heading down the WWE path, that other route you could take with TKO Group. She was,
Yeah.
I guess, trying out for to be, a potential development talent or something like that. I have no idea what happened. Maybe that still happened. Corporate synergy, right? So we'll see. But yeah, I highlighted that one.
Eric, who do you got?
Expect chaos in this one. Kevin Borjas versus I might botch this. Emmanuel Rodriguez. Emmanuel Rodriguez is 6-0. He fought was it Joseph Morales at the Ultimate Fighter in a war of a split decision. Kevin Borjas has got like Drew Dober level great chin. So I would expect violence in this one. Kevin Borjas, obviously, he's got the striking, and I don't know what his grappling will look like if this one goes to the mat, but Rodriguez is definitely someone to watch at this division. And Borjas, he absorbed 156 significant strikes against Joshua Van, in 2023. So I think that this one's going to be highly entertaining.
Yes, should be. Well, I've got Daniel Zellhuber versus King Green, and I have a feeling that there's going to be a knockout in this one. Whether or not it will be King Green, who has been knocked out or finished rather decent amount of times in his last few fights, remains to be seen. But I feel like we're going to
He's getting
see
longer in
finish.
the tooth. What do you want? The guy's been
Yeah.
fighting a long time.
So if
You guys are going to hate my 3 bets in 3 minutes.
I'm postulating if you want to see something cruel, maybe watch this fight. But for the event rating, Scott, what do we have?
So this one, it's kind of our first dud as far as event ratings go for the year. It is a 7. I think there's a few contributing factors here, right? The main event losing Iso Almabayev as the original opponent for Brandon Moreno, that hurt the main event a lot. Kavanaugh is outside of the top 75. He's not in that factoring picture, right? Cohen main event is solid though. You got Marlon Chito Vera against David Martinez. None of us picked that fight. I think that's an interesting fight. That's at least a little bit of impact in the co-main spot. But the rest of the card's kind of rough here. You got 7 out of the 26 fighters on the card are outside of the top 200. 3 of those are outside the top 400, and one of them, Angel Pacheco, who's fighting Santiago Luna at bantamweight, is 808 at bantamweight. We're talking about some very, very deep, non-traditionally UFC caliber prospects on this card, right? There are 8 fighters in the top 50. 4 of those are women fighting at 130 or 135, which is a very shallow talent pool. We're not talking about a very elite group on the whole fighting here. Doesn't mean they're going to be bad fights. And frankly, I think when they do these regional international cards that cater to the locals, as long as they're putting on exciting fights with these people, I don't think it's a bad one for that market. But for the rest of us at home, it's just some fights that would almost be indistinguishable on some levels with some of the more regional cards that we even have.
Fair enough. As Mr. Ben Folks would say, some fights.
Just some fights. Yep. One more thing. Do you guys know what the highest rated fight on this card is from the event rating standpoint?
Oh, it's like combined between the
Wait,
two
let me
fighters.
guess. Let me guess. I got the fights up in
Yep.
front of me right now. I'm gonna go
Yeah,
with.
what do you got?
Got to be Cheeto versus David Martinez.
Ooh,
It's Eileen Perez against
Ah,
Macy
okay.
Chasson.
yes.
This one actually factors into a divisional race. Like we're talking about someone who's in our top 10. Some of you guys had. Did anyone have Macy Chasson in their top 10?
I don't believe
Any
I
of you guys
did.
know?
No.
If she wins, you might. So we'll
It's
see.
true.
We'll
I
see.
think she would have
There's
to
some
be.
impact here.
Yeah, I believe
Yeah,
I've got
You
Eileen.
might, yeah.
Yeah, I've got
I
Eileen
do have
Perez
Eileen
in
in.
mine. So,
We'll
well,
talk about that in a couple weeks.
yes, Eric, I'll throw it over to you to round out UFC Mexico for your 3 bets in 3 minutes. You ready to go?
UFC Mexico. Welcome back. 3 bets in 3 minutes. Another solid week at the office last week. Had John Paul Bassiani by decision plus 320. Missed on Jeff Neal versus Euro Smichko over 1.5 rounds. Jeff Neal, that was a rough flatlining that he got against Medic. We move on back to profitability on the year. Something to note, 9 of these 13 fights are projected to end inside the distance. Again, lower weight classes. And we talk about being at elevation here. And there's a couple fighters here that, are definitely shoddy cardio. Felipe Bunez is one of them. Edgar Chairez is one of the more violent fighters in the UFC. And one of the more violent Mexican fighters. I actually really like him a lot. Not going to be featured on 3 bets in 3 minutes. But keep in mind, cardio could be an issue. 7,000 feet above sea level. 3 bets in 3 minutes. Put 3 bets on the clock. 3 minutes on the clock, and here we go. We start on the prelims, and we're gonna be on the prelims twice here. We are moving on with Douglas Silva de Andrade versus Javier Reyes. Douglas Silva de Andrade has 3 straight fights gone to decision. Not a super high volume guy. Nothing to really write home about in terms of defense. Faces off against Javier Reyes, who you might not have heard of. Javier Reyes, super strong in terms of like his ability to pull together punches and make sure that he's putting together good volume. For this fight, Douglas Silva de Andrade is not somebody that I'm really looking to back at a consistent rate. Javier Reyes, from what I've seen, obviously this is only a second fight in the UFC. From what I've seen, he's coming forward. He's high volume, and I expect him to get this one done here by decision. It's really more of a bet against Silva de Andrade. Is me saying that Javier Reyes is like this elite prospect. I'm not sure that that's the case, but for featherweight, I think that this is a good bet. Reyes by decision plus 240. We move on to the very next fight, and it's Christian Quinoz versus Chris Moutinho. I think we all know kind of why Chris Moutinho is out there. He's 0-3 and still in the UFC. There used to be like a rule where if you lost 3 in a row, the UFC would cut you. It's ridiculous to me that Chris Moutinho is still here, but he is. Christian Quinoz, I have him. I think this line's bad, and you can get it on Ballybet and Hard Rock Bet. Quinoz by submission plus 600. Moutinho not out there really expecting to win very many of these. And while Quinoz has lost the last 2 by submission, he actually looked pretty solid on the ground against Randall Barcelos, who is a really strong grappler. I think that Quinoz has a shot here. He has a couple submissions on his resume from the regional game. I think that a lot of these a lot of these sports books have Quinoz by submission in the plus 350 range. You're getting plus 600. It's just a really good bet, really good line. Again, Quinoz is minus like 700 favorite, and you're getting a sub spot where I don't think Moutinho's even really been challenged on the ground, and I would venture to guess that doesn't really exist based on what we've seen with the rest of his game. So give me Quinoz by submission plus 600, and we're going with another long shot here on the main card. Daniel Zellhaber versus Bobby King Green. Look, Daniel Zellhaber is solid, right? And for me, this seems like a spot where I feel like we're buying way too low on Bobby Green and way too high on Daniel Zellhaber. Zellhaber, he just lost to Michael Johnson by decision. Again, a fight that I had Michael Johnson. Esteban Rovax was a very, very close decision. I think Esteban Rovax might have gotten away with the decision there, but I think that King Green, he's gotten better volume. He's one of the better volume spots. Again, how many people would you say have knocked out Grant Dawson? None. Grant Dawson, that's a good win for him. Jim Miller's a good win for him. So, the whole like Bobby or King Green is washed narrative. Miss me with that. Bad line alert. And make sure you hit this when you can. Bobby Green by decision plus 720 on Fanatics. Everywhere else is plus 500. This is a spot where King Green could counter-strike his way to victory. Daniel Zellhuber is not a volume guy by any means. I'm 30 seconds over. Let's get back to the pod. But we're making money here. We're making some long shots here. 3 big-time plus money bets. Hit one of them, we get profit. I'm going.
Alrighty, thank you so much for that, Eric. And guys, before we go into quick hits, we learned this past weekend, obviously, UFC 327, that event in Miami, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, Miami. Been waiting on a co-main event. We do know one title fight that will be in on it. It remains to be seen if there will be 2. But Joshua Van will be defending his flyweight title against Tatsuro Taira. Eric, I'm going to throw this over to you. What are your thoughts about this being a title fight on Miami? What do you think?
At first I was like, I'm not so sure about Tatsuro Taira fighting for the title, but what do you guys think the betting odds are for this fight? They're betting odds already.
This
is my least favorite game. Minus 130.
For Van?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I think
Tatsuro Taira.
Yeah.
Tatsuro Taira is minus 170. He's a
really
big favorite. Yes.
Wow. Okay.
So there's definitely some betting love for it. Actually opened minus 150 and has ballooned to minus 170.
I guess it's the grappling they like, yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. I still would have booked Manel Kape versus Joshua Van, but it sounds like they maybe had promised Taira a title shot after his last win, and they didn't want to go back on it. I have no idea what the specifics of
that doesn't sound like the UFC.
No, I think they were looking at some.
I just don't understand why.
I think they were probably like, Tatsuro Taira's got a lot more Instagram followers than Manel Kape does. That's my hypothesis.
I mean, that's an even worse theory. Oh my God, if they're doing it on that, but whatever. I guess that is what it is. Either way, if you take either of those 2 theories, I don't agree with any of them. But I think that
Diego Lopez got a title shot.
Based on that,
yeah, pretty much. They're bigger audience,
100%.
right?
You're 100% right on that. That's it. That's all I got. I think it's an okay fight.
Scott, what do you think?
There's something interesting about this fight that I will say, right? Like, I would have been more interested, I think, if they had been able to get this in Japan, like they were sort of not promising by any stretch. I think there was kind of this like, man, that would be kind of cool. Maybe we should do that. And then obviously it didn't come together. And I think that would have been cool. They put it out in the ether and that didn't happen. So they set me up for a very slight disappointment. Doesn't make that big a difference at the end of the day for me as a fan. But I will say this. There's a kind of cool, the future is now element to this fight. These guys are both in their mid-20s. So we could be seeing them fighting against each other for like the next 12 years or something. And that's kind of fun, the idea of that. Like maybe they don't have to rush a trilogy if that were to ever happen. I think that'd be kind of cool. Maybe not, but let's get wistful. Let's start get romantic here. Let's think about possibilities here. Manel Kape also obviously a very qualified candidate here. I don't think that would have been the worst direction. They didn't go that way. How about they do Manel Kape versus Kyoji Horiguchi number 2? Let's run it back. And let's say Alexandre Pantoja is not ready when they want to get this belt up there again. The winner of that fight. And you can even put this fight on in Miami as well. Why not?
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like that's something that could work.
I also would have liked to see them do Horiguchi versus Van, especially with Pantoja out. Like, I don't know. I feel like it would be perfect. You get Horiguchi, who's on a run right now, up to the title shot while Pantoja's out. I feel like that makes sense too.
So you get Van beating Taira, and you get Gooch beating Kape, and then you got that fight. Boom.
Yeah, no, for
Box
sure.
office.
I wonder what a gym would act like if 2 of their fighters were facing each other and they were actively training camp. Someone would have to leave.
This
happens.
It is a big gym. It is a big gym.
When's the last time that it happened? No, but they train together every day. I can't. Has that happened?
A giant camp like that is certainly ready for that scenario.
I think they've probably had it happen before. I do think it is interesting though that Pantoja could be coming back to fight a different guy that he lost the belt to. It's a little bit unsatisfying, And I'm sure for
there is a little bit of that, yeah. But we have too many of those unfortunate situations where the rematch, the follow up to make it right, either takes too long or doesn't happen. I mean, next week you've got Charles Oliveira, who I just spoke to for our outlet. You should check out that interview. He's fighting against Max Holloway in a fight that ended in like 100 seconds because part of his body went numb, something with his neck or something like that he was talking about. And that fight took 11 years to finally put together. Now we get the real fight. So maybe it happens, you know? It's very similar, right? We're talking about two title contestants here in their mid-20s. The same thing happened with that fight. Maybe a decade from now, these guys can fight again or something, you know?
Absolutely. Real quick before we move on, I'll go one by one. Scott, do you think that are you happy with this being the main event, or do you think it needs a different one on top?
Well, it's I don't think they've said, right? That's
Mhm.
still TBD.
It is TBD.
Um, yeah, so we don't know. I I imagine they're probably formulating the plans for April, May, and June in those major cards that they have coming up. So I would think they probably have a bigger one coming. Yeah, I would watch it, but I think they probably see flyweight title fights as nothing that they really want to feature as the main event of a numbered event
I
just
can't
yet.
think of the last time. Yeah. Eric,
I think
similar
Brandon
It was
thoughts?
like
Moreno.
2 years ago when they had Steve Erceg.
That is true. That is true. Now I can think of the last time. Thank you, Scott.
They were doing. I think every Brandon Moreno or Davison Figueiredo fight was a main event too.
That is, I mean, that was a pretty good
That was further ago, and not
quadrilogy.
all of them. Definitely not all of them.
Yeah. Well, let
Not
us
all.
know in the comments what you think about that matchup, Tyra versus Van. Would you have preferred Manel Cop, like Eric is saying? Just let us know your thoughts on all of that for Miami. Scott, I'm going to throw it over to you for quick hits before we get into the final round to wrap this show up. What do you got?
We got a lot of announced events actually in the last week. So UFC announced a trio that of headliners, I should say, in particular for April. Renato Moicano against Chris Duncan. That's on April 4th at the Apex. You got Gilbert Burns versus Mike Malott on the 18th of April. That's in Winnipeg, Canada. We got Malott headlining in his homeland. And then Sean Brady. I think this is the most interesting of the three fights. Sean Brady against Joaquin Buckley on April 25. That is also back at the Apex. On the PFL side, they announced a pair of their fights on April 16. They'll be in Belfast. Somebody Eric may have heard of is Paul Hughes is fighting against JJ Wilson. That's the main event for that one. And then
Call for that one.
on May 2nd, there you go, there you go. On May 2nd, they're going to be in Sioux Falls, where they tend to put Logan Storley fights, and he will be headlining against Florin Zendelli, who was a winner of PFL Europe a couple years ago at welterweight. So that'll be another one on tap for them in the United States. There's a sort of a non-fight announcement here with Kamaru Usman. He said on his Pound for Pound podcast that Hunter Campbell, UFC, they have indicated there's disinterest in him facing Islam Makhachev for the welterweight title the next time they do that. So they've got other plans for Kamaru Usman. I'm sure that's disappointing for him. I think a lot of people were pretty okay with that. So the division just moves on, right? In a way that hopefully won't bother too many people. Jalton Almeida, we talked about how he was released, of course, after that incredibly dispiriting performance, really two in a row of that. He quickly found a new home after his release from the UFC. He's signed with ACA, joining its well-stocked heavyweight 205-pound division, depending on where he ends up. He reportedly passed on basically his pick of promotions, including could have been fighting on that Rousey versus Carano card. That was another one that was reported. And then lastly, we've got a little legal update here. Ultimate Fighter Season 1 winner Diego Sanchez has made a plea agreement stemming from his 2025 arrest on several gun charges. No sentencing yet.
All right, all right. Thank you for that, Scott. And guys, let's talk about the final round. I think it's fitting that we're talking about Mr. Cain Velasquez coming up on our Mexico City card. Obviously, proud Mexican-American fighter. The trilogy that he had with Junior Dos Santos. And my gosh, that was a bit of a turn of events in that second fight, and then just a continuation of it in that third fight. Obviously, Cain getting knocked out in the first minute or so by Junior Dos Santos, and then going on to just make him pay for it for 10 straight rounds, essentially.
Well, like 9.5.
9.5. Yeah, he finished him at the very end. He was like, all right, and to tie a bow on it, I have to ask, was both of those fights at sea level?
All those fights were at sea level as far as I'm. There was one in Texas. I don't
Okay.
remember where. And then I want to say both of the other two might have been in Vegas or California or California.
Okay, I'm curious just because like I'm still learning about the myth of sea level Kane, right? I'm wondering if like any time he lost, he was not at sea level. So I was like, was the first fight? You get what I'm saying. But
Where was the first? I'm trying to remember.
UFC
I don't remember off the top of my
166
head.
was in
Yeah, I thought it was
Houston.
California.
155 was in Vegas. And where was UFC on Fox 1? It
Was it California?
was
bear with us here.
California. There you go,
California.
Anaheim.
All right. So
Look
all
at
at sea
that.
level.
Sometimes I
Anyways,
pay attention, at
California,
least a
Vegas,
little.
and Texas.
But
Scott,
I will say,
your memory is solid.
I will say, yeah, that is very impressive. I will say that
That's
this
crazy.
fight is a breath of fresh air watching all these heavyweight fights today go a certain way.
Right.
Seeing these guys with good cardio and just it's a
In shape.
freaking entertaining fight. The second one, I've never been so entertained by watching someone just get absolutely battered.
Get their face rearranged.
Yeah, for 5 rounds. It was absolutely
Yeah.
crazy.
JDS, his lip was just like next level swollen. It was
Yeah.
ridiculous. He had that giant knot. It was on one side of the head. I think this one, man, he just looked so rough in that one though. But man, he kept eating it. And frankly, even late in both of those fights, you saw him going for stuff. You saw him trying.
Yep.
Like he did not fade. He did not give up. He had so much will to fight. A real fighter's fighter, I think, in there, and he was very likable, especially at the time. Very popular in that way. Kane, obviously he had his fans too, but he was a little quieter in the way he went about his business. And honestly, I like that era of heavyweight. It's not the greatest era in MMA's history. I think there were more fascinating times, especially in Pride. I think that was a really cool time, but also this might have been like almost a culmination of maybe the best like athletes and fighters in styles that were also very, very exciting too. And I'm kind of wistful, I guess, for this period of time.
Among UFC heavyweights, I think Cain Velasquez might be number one ever. This was, especially those
You
last
mean
two
like take him
fights.
at like one fight? Like if you got to pick one guy for one fight?
Yeah, yeah, like just in terms of like the mixed martial arts skill set, you got the cardio, the wrestling, and the striking was solid. Like just across the board, Cain Velasquez, such a beast.
He looked really, really good in
He
both
looks
of those
scary.
Prime
fights.
Fedor versus Prime Kane would have been so much fun. I would have
Oh
loved to
my
have watched
God.
that fight.
Oh my
That
God.
could never have happened, but that would have been really neat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you could do it in UFC video game.
Yeah,
Oh, the
there you
UFC
go.
video game, yes.
Well, guys, let us know in the comments what you thought about that last homework assignment if you were a good student and did your homework. But speaking of, guys,
And you had 2 weeks to do it, guys.
did have 2 weeks to do it. I did it on
Yeah.
vacation. No, I
I
didn't.
had to
did
go
it
back and I was
yesterday.
like, what happened to these fights?
Yeah, you did it yesterday, didn't you?
I did. But Eric, I'm gonna ask you actually this time. What's my next assignment?
Okay, this is a fun assignment. Let me pull it up here. We are doing Cody Garbrandt versus Dominic Cruz. If you haven't seen this fight, it's one of the most interesting fights in bantamweight history. And just grab some popcorn. This is a little bit more recent than I feel like some of the fights that we do, but this one was real interesting.
I mean, it
back in
was almost 10 years ago. It was
It
December
was 10 years
2016.
ago.
It was a long time.
I've been an MMA fan for 10 years. It's crazy to me. But because this
It
is
was
right around
it was the fight right before Ronda's last fight.
Yes,
Mm,
yes. What a
Same
crazy
card,
time that
yeah.
was. What a crazy time
Crazy.
that was. But yes, this is a really fun fight, and we have a lot to discuss next week when we watch it. You guys, everyone's got to watch this one.
I'll give you another quick little setup here too. Obviously, Dominic Cruz, he had finally gotten his title back after years of injuries. He got it back at the beginning of the year. He had defended it successfully, capped his trilogy against Uriah Faber over in the summer. This was what was next for him against Garbrandt, who, if you can believe it, there was a point where Garbrandt was this up-and-comer who was just knocking fools out. He came off 3 straight round 1 TKO KOs in the same year to set up this fight. So it was definitely a very surprising matchup if you were looking at the beginning of the year.
Yes.
Like you wouldn't have thought this would be the end of the year. But also, one more thing, the scoring for this fight is all over the map. So it's not necessarily you have to watch it from a scoring perspective. Eric's right. There's some interest in the fight in general. But I'm curious how you guys would score it, knowing how 4 out of the 5 rounds were not agreed upon by the judges for one reason or
Yep.
another.
okay.
And the betting odds for it was Dominic Cruz was a pretty moderate favorite, and he was the champion, so that makes sense.
Alrighty, well, to round out our history of MMA, Scott, what happened this week in MMA?
I'm only going back 6 years here. We're going back to February 29th, leap year day on 2020, excuse me, right before the pandemic kind of threw everybody off. Davison Figueiredo, he defeated Joseph Benavidez not to win the vacant flyweight title that he was supposed to be able to be up for, but he missed weight, so he didn't get a title. So they had to do this rematch again, and it ended up being so much more brutal later in the year. Benavidez, he was eligible to win. Obviously, it just didn't happen for him. So, and by the way, this vacant belt was created because Triple C, Henry Cejudo, decided to vacate it and focus on his bantamweight title.
All right. And Scott, for those who are wishing for one more fight this weekend outside of the major MMA promotions to round out the show, what's one more fight that people could watch?
I wasn't impressed with the overall slate this weekend, but I'll give you LFA 227, which is Friday night. Main card starts 9 p.m. on Vice TV, headlined by Rafael Do Nascimento against Shuya Kamikubo. They are bantamweights. Kamikubo is 74th in the world at Fight Matrix, and then we have Do Nascimento is 164. We're not talking about elite matchups this weekend, but you know what? LFA is a solid promotion. They put on good fights. It's the main event. You can check it out.
All right. Thank you, Scott, and Eric as well for joining me on yet another episode of the Against the Cage podcast. Hopefully you at home enjoy all the fights this weekend, and we will see you next week.